Chapter 7. In the morning, I stood by Miss Tamarin's desk. Yes, Mathilde? I handed her the form. She went still. You talked about it as a family? Yes. She studied me, rubbing one chalky white hand with the other, as if cold, but after a moment she seemed to think of something else and smiled. That's all right, Mathilde. It will be all right. I nodded and went back to my seat. Megs looked over at me, her eyebrows raised. I nodded. Then her eyes narrowed, and she started scribbling her math assignment with dark, noisy pencil marks. I swallowed hard and tried to do my own assignment. But when Miss Tamarin rang her little bell for our morning break, Meg stood silently by my desk while I pretended to concentrate on my work. You coming? I got your coat and scarf. I looked up, taking my clothes from her like a hug. She stayed close as I put them on. She smiled. Come on, silly. And we went outside together. Mathilde, I'm sorry to interrupt your work, but could you watch Ty while I make dinner? I shut my book with relief. I'd spent the past several afternoons stuck at my desk under Mother's orders to prepare for the test. I don't think they played outside today. She has a lot of energy, Mother said. I followed her downstairs, where Ty was leaping between sofa and chair. She's been running through the kitchen with the boiling water. I can watch her. The best trick to get Ty to stop whatever she was doing was to do something fun without her. I got out our can of crayons and a few sheets of paper. Our last sheets, actually. Paper was getting scarce, but it seemed like an okay time to use it. I spread a sheet out on the floor in the living room and lay on my stomach, tipping over the can of crayons. Crayons were a treasure too. Our small collection was all mismatched stubs. Ty was still jumping around me as I selected a green crayon and started drawing a large circle. What are you doing? Homework, serious stuff. I continued to draw. Can I help? Oh, probably not. It's really hard. Not too hard for me. Well, I have to draw a picture of our house. Our house isn't a circle, and it's not green. Oh, I stopped. What would you do then? She sighed and shoved me out of the way, picked beige crayons, and started drawing squares and rectangles. I sighed too, as she settled and started drawing a pony outside of our house. Not that we had a pony. Cammy came home from her friend's house. What are you doing? She asked. Mathilde's homework, Ty said. Cammy looked at me, about to ask, but I shook my head. You know what would be really fun? Cammy asked. If we could use the paints. Why don't we? I asked. They'll only dry up and go to waste. We can finish the paints and paper together. Let's just go upstairs so we're not in Mother's way. Ty scooped up the papers and took them upstairs while Cammy put away the crayons. I found the paint tubes and brushes and squeezed the colors into a tin. Red, green, yellow, blue. The girls each painted a picture. When I went to refresh the paints for them, the tubes felt all squeezed out. But there was only one more piece of paper anyway. Let's do our handprints, I said. My sisters giggled as I brushed rainbow swirls of paint onto their hands. I pressed Ty's onto the center of the paper, then Cammy's outside that. Then both held up their hands, grinning. I painted my left hand, and Cammy took the brush to paint my right. My bigger prints joined theirs on the paper, on the outside, sheltering them. Little, middle, and big. The handprints looked like they belonged to one person who was growing, captured a few years apart. I pinned it to the wall. My sisters stood back, admiring. We ignored the fingerprint smudges I had made at the corners of the paper and on the wall, even though we were never allowed to color on the walls. It's beautiful, Ty said, and it was. Still holding our hands in the air, we looked sadly at the remaining paint in the tin. I wish we could paint more, Ty said, and then she pressed her entire hand into the paints. Ty, Cammy cried. Warmth pressed on the inside of my ribs, way up high, by my heart. Do the other one, I said. Cammy's mouth fell open, but Ty removed her hand and pressed the other into the paint. I climbed onto the chair and then onto the desk and signaled to Ty to follow me, which she did carefully, her hands still raised. She pressed her palms and then her fingers spread wide against the white wall. Cammy? I asked. I couldn't tell them that our house would be turned to rubble any night now. What did the walls matter? What mattered is that we were standing here right now, the three of us together. Cami dipped her hands and pressed them to the wall. I did mine. And then we were laughing, and we couldn't stop. We stood on my bed and pressed the wall there. Then the slanted eaves. In a row under the window. When our house was knocked down and someone picked through its pieces, maybe he would find these handprints and know that children had lived here, that we had lived here. And if our house turned to dust, then within the dust would be a million tiny particles with our stamp. The universe would remember we had existed. My sisters stopped giggling. I turned. Mother stood in the doorway. The warmth in my chest reached a squeezing heat. Mother came into the room, turning slowly. Her brow was creased again. Was she deciding how angry to be? Then her face relaxed, and she folded me into a hug, kissed my cheek. I love it. You do? I looked up, surprised to see tears gathering in her eyes. My only worry is how much soap we'll use cleaning you up. Oh, I looked down at my hands. I hadn't thought about soap. Go ahead now, help your sisters. Dinner's ready.